Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Desert Design and Development Mpx Sd. I got my first MPX, and then I thought I need an excuse to get another MPX, and I happened to be on the internet, which is a bad place to go when you have money to spend, and I saw a video of this particular firearm being used, and I was like, wow, an integrally suppressed MPX, that's cool. And then I started down a road that I like to call just the ordeal. To actually getting one of these, and then of course doing the 2,000 round review on it. What you're really getting is you take your MPX and you send it into them, and they create an integrally suppressed MPX. So this isn't like a rail over an MPX-K or anything like that. I've actually got a vented barrel, or reported barrel if you will, that has an over barrel suppressor to give me an MPX Sd, which is integrally suppressed, which is exactly what I wanted. And then I wanted to know, was it worth the hassle and what I like to call, again, the ordeal to actually get one of these? Well, let me tell you about it. As far as features go, you're getting an MPX because you have to send them an MPX in order for them to turn it into this. And that's exactly what I did. However, it was not a straightforward process. And if I have anything bad to say right off the bat about the Desert Design and Development, it's that their customer service was abysmal. It took entirely way too long for this thing to return to me. There was a point in time when I was told it was finished and it was getting ready to go out the door, and then months later it still had not arrived. And I'm a pretty patient person. I understand work, especially custom work, takes time. However, a lack of communication got to the point where I had to contact a third party who had a better relationship with these guys to even get someone to return my email. That is not a way to run a business, but I'm not going to hold their customer service against them if they provide a good product. That's not exactly true. I would absolutely hold your customer service against you even if you provided a good product. Insofar as I probably wouldn't do business with you again even if your product was great, because I'd have flashbacks to the terrible and aggravating experience I had previously. And a way to keep me as a customer is not to frustrate me. And that's kind of what happened. But enough about that. That's the caveat emptor, literally buyer beware, that I'll give you about Desert Design and Development for my personal experience. Maybe it was just me. Hopefully it was just me and other people haven't gone through similar experiences, but I'm just telling you right up front that, well, that's one thing right off the bat, definitely not happy about. What about the overall performance? Now, I'm only reviewing the suppressor conversion, the actual SD conversion to this Gen 2 MPX, which started its life as an 8-inch MPX. They ask you specifically to send them an 8-inch MPX, which I don't understand because they just rebarrel it anyway. And I never got my original barrel or rail back. Now, it's entirely possible that they took that 8-inch barrel and cut it down, but you can't put the original rail back on it once it gets returned to you, and I never got that rail back. So I guess charge that to the game? Not really sure. I ended up having to get in a Midwest Industries rail, which is fine, except the 8-inch Midwest Industries rail is very difficult to come by these days, so I bought the 14-inch and I cut it down with a Dremel. Can't even tell, right? Really good cuts. I did some painter's tape, and I can follow a straight line with a cutting disc, so that's how I ended up with the rail that I needed to cover my integrally suppressed MPX Sd. But how does this thing perform? It actually performs awesome. Performance-wise, this is really a review of their suppressor and their integrally suppressed barrel that they modify the MPX for. Because the MPX is kind of already a known quantity. I've done a review on it in the past. You can check out my MPX-K review if you're curious about my thoughts on that specific, the gun itself. What about the suppressor? Does it do what it's supposed to do? You know, it does. Barely. One of the appeals to integrally suppressed 9mm PCCs or submachine guns is taking supersonic ammo and making it subsonic, and it's a very niche need. It's more of a military application historically than it is anything else, but I like the idea of being able to get subsonic out of anything I put in the gun. So I put it on a Chrono and I shot 115 and 124. The 115 grain and the 124 grain, it sneaks in just below supersonic, so it's subsonic almost with an asterisk, although numbers are hard numbers depending on elevation for what subsonic actually is. Looking at about 1100 feet per second, I'm trying to get underneath that threshold, and it sneaks in there, barely. Compounded with the other aggravations I had with this gun, it leaves me feeling, well, a little bit disappointed that it wasn't able to bring it down to 900 or, you know, even almost like the unicorn of taking 115 or 124 and bringing it out of the gun at 850. Think if you had a little barrel length and had a little bit more porting inside that suppressor, you would have gotten that. The tone is good. But the tone is still sneaking up there towards that supersonic, which I didn't really care for, and I figured with the weight and with, well, the cost and the aggravation that went into getting this gun back and actually being able to make the video on it, and more personal than that, actually being able to use what I paid for, I was left a little bit disappointed with that performance. So of course the next question is going to be, well, what did I give up? Did I give up any accuracy? We'll get to that. We want to know if it's going to be long-term reliable. So the first thing I do with almost any firearm or firearm-related component is the 500 round burn down, which is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if that frequency of fire would identify problems that you wouldn't see shooting the same round count over a much longer period of time. So here's your burn down. That's warm. First last round of the burn down, fantastic. No sound, no tone change. Suppressor did get mighty hot, and this is one of the problems with integrally suppressed firearms, or people who want to put their rail, take a short barrel and longer rail and put a suppressor underneath that rail, is increases rail diameter. That's just unavoidable, and it increases how much heat is transferred to that rail for your support side hand. So 9mm doesn't quite get the gun as hot, same round count comparison as you would get from like a 300 Blackout or 223 or 308 or something like that, but it definitely gets spicy there towards the end. But most people are not going to shoot 500 rounds in 3 to 4 minutes like I will for the burn down. After the burn down, I just started using the Desert Design and Development Mpx Sd for my normal practice, getting a really good feel for it and looking for any kind of problems that would arise that I wouldn't otherwise normally see. As far as functionality goes, they're not changing the operating system of the MPX at all, and SIG designed their piston system with suppressors in mind on the MPX, and of course on the MCX, that whole family of firearms. So it does run dirtier just because it is suppressed, so you just definitely have to pay attention to keeping it lubricated a little bit more than you would if you only occasionally suppress it. There were a couple times when getting in the range for the first rounds down range where I'd put a mag in it and go to charge it, and it would be a little stiff, a little sticky. Drop a few drops of oil in there, cycle it through, and go to work. It's quiet. It's about as quiet as you'd expect. However, I am a little disappointed, especially in the fact that it's a vented barrel, ported barrel with an over barrel suppressor, that I was not getting that super to subsonic performance that you get from some other integrally suppressed 9mm firearms. Maybe there's some ammunition out there some supersonic ammunition out there that's borderline where I could throw the 115 in there and I would get that, 850 to 9-ish feet per second. That wasn't the case. I'm still seeing over 1,000 almost every round I put in there. Occasionally, just on really cheap 9mm 115, I would see on the magneto speed, I'd see a pop that was like 890, but that'd be more of a fluke. What about accuracy? Compared to what it started its life as, the 8-inch MPX, am I giving up a great deal of accuracy? And keeping in mind, I'm looking for accuracy that I would expect from a PCC or a submachine gun. So here's a 5-round group I fired on 124 grain gold dot at the zero distance of 25 yards. I think that's respectable accuracy for what we're getting. What else do I really expect this thing to do? I've got a very small footprint package, although it's not much smaller than taking an MPX-K and just throwing a suppressor on it. In fact, I can get an MPX-K and throw like an Omega 9K on it and have comparable to almost a shorter gun, depending on what stock I use and things like that. So to me, this is almost like a lessons learned. Just because I want it doesn't mean I'm going to end up enjoying it as much as I thought I was going to. And I think the real bummer for me was the fact that it did not behave like the venerable MP5 SD in regards to subsonicking supersonic things. And that's kind of what I wanted. The suppressor tone is fantastic for what it is. I'm still getting at the ear a very quiet can. My indoor tests, my outdoor tests, no matter what ammunition I put through it, performed well and did the whole 2,000 rounds. And I enjoy shooting it. It's not unwieldy heavy. It's no different than taking, like I said, an MPX-K and putting a suppressor on it. So I don't feel like there's a ridiculous amount of added weight. Another issue that you run into with the suppressor, overall suppressor diameter in relationship with the rail, with M-LOK, is you have to be very careful about your M-LOK screw length, or you're going to have impacts of your accessories, in this case my rail scales, and my front QD attachment, where I had to cut the screws down to make sure that they weren't making contact with the can, which could cause a suppressor shift inside the rail, which could cause a baffle strike. So you definitely want to be very, very careful about that when mounting, if you do happen to get one of these. If you order it now, if we're going off of my experience, you should get it 7 to 8 months, whatever. Machining work is excellent. They do really good work. They produced a very accurate carrying over. I didn't lose any of the inherent accuracy I would expect from an OEM MPX. And it is integrally suppressed, so I don't have to worry about, you know, keeping up with suppressor parts or anything like that. I just very anticlimactic, I guess. From a functional standpoint, it works as advertised. From a use standpoint, I mean, yeah, it's great. It's integrally suppressed, and you can throw it in a bag or whatever your purpose with it is going to be, for home defense or just for a range toy or for law enforcement purposes or whatever you happen to be doing with it. It's going to perform, like I said, as advertised. But 2,000 rounds later, I should have just spent the money on another suppressor or an MPX-K and just a can and put the can on it, and I'd be getting the same thing without the, I guess, cool factor of having that integrally suppressed design. When most people look at it, they think it's literally just what a lot of people do. They buy a K, they buy a longer rail, and they just screw a suppressor in there and they call that integrally suppressed. This one is integrally suppressed, but it certainly doesn't act like it. Functionality and reliability is there, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And when I couple that with my customer service experience, again, sample size of 1, I wouldn't be doing business with them again. And I'll probably end up getting rid of it just because there's other integrally suppressed PCCs out there that are going to give me better performance with a much better customer service experience as far as sound attenuation and actually getting what I ordered in a timely manner are concerned. And hopefully that customer service experience was just somehow a fluke on my part, and other people aren't going to experience the same thing. This thing exists, and if you're interested, they do really good work. They provide a well-machined product that's going to not take away the reliability that you'd get from an OEM MPX. And I guess that's about all I have to say about that. I'm Eric with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.